title of this is Innovation, Recovery, Resilience, How to Develop a Resilience Program for Your Organization. I thought it was really important for you to understand the background and why resilience is important. Number one, what it is, and how it relates, overall resilience relates to resilience in your organization. Because believe it or not, putting business continuity, which is another word for resilience, the ability for you to continue your business after a disaster or a disruption occurs, is not that complicated. And in fact, at the end of the presentation, we're going to go to a website that's going to give you a toolkit that'll tell you exactly what you need to do to build resilience in your organization. We're going to talk about some of those factors. And we're going to talk about, since we are in my adopted stage, you can tell a lot of the accomplishments that he read came from Oklahoma. And I do feel like this is my second home. I spent more time here than any other state except Louisiana. And what is being done now in Oklahoma for all of your businesses and you as individuals to help make this a more resilient place. My colleagues in the resilience field think, I really was destined for this because I live in the state that has had the highest amount of dollar damage from natural disasters of any state in the nation. And I do a lot of my work in the state that has had the highest number of declared disasters of any state in the nation. So I guess I am somewhat qualified just from where I've lived and where I've worked. But what I hope you'll get out of this today is an overall view of what resilience really is, how it relates to economic development, to the economy of your county, city, the economy of Oklahoma, and how that all relates to your business. And if you can walk out of here today and say, hey, I understand this, I get it. And I understand that what I do in my business impacts my community, and what my community does impacts my business. And I get that in a relationship. Then we will have succeeded today. Let me start with the definition of economic development, because that's the background I come from. That's the way I approach and my practice approaches recovery from disasters from an economic development perspective. For you as a business owner, executive, someone in charge of quality, and by the way, I was involved in the quality movement when I was a wee little child back in the early 1990s. I think I was 5 years old when I started the Architects Quality Council. I'm originally from Shreveport, and we started a quality movement there. So I'm very familiar with the principles of quality, which never change, and why it's important, so very important for our communities, for our companies, for our economy. But in terms of economic development, it's nothing more than the creation and use of public-private partnerships, commonly known as PPP, that result in widespread, sustainable private investment. The two key words there are widespread and sustainable. Because if you just do one project and you don't have an impact on the rest of the community, in economic development you fail. You have to continually look for ways to improve the community, improve the economy in the community, and generate wealth. And the goal of economic development really is wealth generation. It's not jobs. And that's what too many people equate economic development. Well, let's create a bunch of jobs. You can create jobs and create your way into poverty if those aren't well-paying jobs from companies that add a tremendous amount of value to resources, export those resources outside and bring dollars in. That's how you create wealth. And that's what really the goal of economic development is. That's done through creating these public-private partnerships. And at its heart, economic development is about risk reduction. In quality, that's really a big part of what you do too, right? Is reduce risk. Reduce the risk of failure in creating a product. Reduce the risk of an unsatisfied customer because the level of quality and customer service was not adhered to. That's really the goal of economic development, to reduce investment risk and or increase return. And really that's what public-private partnerships do. And in the field of disaster recovery, when something happens, when an event occurs, and by the way, Katrina was not the first disaster that I worked on. The first disaster I worked on was in March of 1994, again when I was 5 years old. I walked into the Chamber of Commerce in Oklahoma City for my first consulting assignment that was in the old Santa Fe parking garage right behind us. Those of you old enough to remember that, after a disaster had occurred in this town. And it wasn't the Monroe building. That happened, as you know, the year after. That was an economic disaster. Collapse of Penn Square Bank and the whole collapse of the economy around the oil field. And a lot of you aren't old enough to remember that those of you that are will know that Oklahoma City was on the verge of bankruptcy when that occurred. So when you think of in terms of disaster, of course natural disaster is, by and large, gets most of the attention, but there are a wide variety of disasters and disruptions. And certainly the Monroe building bombing was a tragedy and a disaster in of itself caused by humans. So think about that in broad terms, and in your own companies, think about disruptions that can occur for a wide variety of reasons. Because the same principles apply. Whether it's man-made, whether it's because of a faulty product, and a recall, all of those things are disruptions. And how you deal with disruptions, how you're able to withstand those, really is the definition of resilience. So what we try to do is lower that risk and increase the return to the point that private investment can occur. That's what I call the inflection point. So in the case of a disaster, you have public investors, city, state, federal government, not-for-profits, non-governmental organizations on the public and nonprofit side that make these initial high-risk investments to try to lower the risk. And then you have existing businesses, existing residents, new firms, new people, and developers. That's the private investment that can come in once that risk is lowered or the return is raised enough that they feel justified in making those investments. Everybody with me so far? I love getting presentations right after lunch. Especially when it's a good lunch. You know, that was mediocre, that was a good lunch. You ate the fruit thing like I did, I'm in trouble, I got coffee up here. So, again, resilience is the ability of a place, and a place can be a company, okay? That's a broad term. To effectively resist and recover from an adverse event. That's resilience. Recovery are the actions that are taken to bring a place back to what we call steady state. Back to the place it was before. But that's not all recovery is about. Recovery is also about preparing that place making it better prepared for the next event. And economic recovery is really economic development strategy that's wrapped around a specific event. I've done economic development strategy for, I guess, again, since I was 5, for 20 plus years. And all economic recovery is taking that and wrapping it around a specific event. And your companies, if you look at recovery in that light, something has happened. You've had a disaster, you've had, again, a product that was defective, you've had some disruption in your business. You should think about recovery from that as developing a strategy, developing goals and objectives, tactics and actions to respond to that event. It's wrapped around whatever that event was. Does it make sense to everybody? probably all heard about the horrendous tornadoes that hit Joplin. See, you thought I was going to talk about Oklahoma tornadoes, didn't you? And my friend John Reed, who you heard mention at lunch for the Oklahoma Business Roundtable, went to the Weather Center down at the University of Oklahoma and had them develop a series of maps that mapped the occurrence of serious tornadoes, F4 and F5 tornadoes, over the past 15 years. Because in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, Oklahoma and Kansas were known as what? Tornado Alley, right? But in the late 90s to today, that has shifted, believe it or not. And now Tornado Alley is actually, most of Oklahoma's not even in it. It's the eastern part from east of Tulsa. Tornado Alley is where I'm working right now, in Little Rock, Arkansas, in Memphis and Jackson, Tennessee, in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Joplin, Missouri. That's Tornado Alley now. I'm not telling you not going to have another tornado. I'm not crazy. I've been here a long time, right? But Joplin is a great example of what a community did that was devastated by a tornado to come back. I could talk about more after 1999. I could talk about more now, but it's 4 years on from Joplin. It's only a year and a half on from Moore, which brings up my next point. That's something for you to keep in mind. Because again, you guys are the quality guys. You think long term. Recovery is long term. Katrina happened in 2005. A school opened last April that was destroyed in Katrina. In 2014, recovery takes a long time. Something that you should all take to your respective CEOs and owners, and if you are that yourself, get that into your head. If you have a disruptive event, if something occurs, don't expect that recovery to happen overnight. That's the worst thing you can do. It's the worst expectation you can set for yourself, your employees, the people that are responsible to you, and the people to whom you are responsible, including your customers. And I've seen too many times where businesses had an event occur, either a natural disaster occurred that affected them from outside or something internal happened that affected them from the inside, and they were too optimistic. Does General Motors ring a bell to any of you? Any of you with General Motors? I'm not going to be critical of General Motors, but General Motors was extremely optimistic in their projections of the extent of the damage of those ignition switches and the extent of the time and effort it's going to take to recover from that. That's a lesson for any of you that are involved with companies. But what did Joplin do? Joplin attacked this at all fronts. They called on the federal government for assistance. They called on the state for assistance. They called on major nonprofits for assistance. They had the head of their chamber of commerce go on the Rush Limbaugh show. What? The Rush Limbaugh show? Why would you go on the Rush Limbaugh show? Who listens to the Rush Limbaugh show? A lot of people that are in senior positions in companies. Now, I'm not advocating or denouncing Rush Limbaugh. I'm just telling you, these guys did whatever it took to recover. That's another lesson for you. Do what you need to do to recover from that adverse event. And if that means going on the news and saying, this happened to us, we need everyone in the community to understand this. To number one, to know that we're going to come back, we're going to open our doors back, but right now we're hurting. And number two, we need our customers to be patient with us and to stay with us. Because we couldn't help this, we know you couldn't help it, but please stay with us. The other thing that they did is they put into place a set of initiatives to bring their businesses back as soon as possible. One of the most important things that they did was raise money for their businesses to recover in the initial few weeks after the disaster. Let me ask you this, and I should have done this to start with. How many of you represent businesses that have been affected by some type of adverse event? About half of you. That's a pretty typical response. And that's really kind of surprising to me that, again, in Oklahoma, because you had so many adverse events. In Louisiana, it's probably 75% of people are going to raise their hand. But if you've been in that situation, and especially if you represent a small to medium-sized business, and that's a business with up to 500, 600 employees, the critical time for those businesses is not after the disaster loans that the SBA is wonderful. They have these disaster loans. They lower the requirements. They waive the fees. They try to get money to you as soon as possible. But that soon as possible is often 3 to 4 to 5 months. The critical time is in the first 2 to 8 weeks, when you're losing money because your business has been disrupted. You don't know, your inventory may have been, you're trying to settle your insurance claims, and your cash is like this. That's when businesses really need help. And what Joplin did is they raised, not a ton of money, they raised about $6 million. And they loaned money in small increments, $50,000, $60,000 to these businesses. But that was a lifeline to them, to be able to maintain their operations until their insurance claims were settled, until the emergency loans that they had applied for came in. They did a wide variety of other things, including, and something that you're very fortunate to have here in Oklahoma, and I want you to write this down. I'm going to talk some more about it in a minute. And that is the Center for Terrorism and Disaster. How many of you have heard that? Heard of that? A couple of you. It's a great organization. It's headed by the former president of OU, Dr. Van Horn, and his wife, Betty Pepperbaum. Fantastic, dealing with the psychological impacts of disasters. And for you guys that have been through this, you go through the disaster, people start coming back to work, but are they really back? Are they really back? That's the question you have to ask them, but most importantly yourself, because they may not be back and they don't know it. They may think they are. They may think they're okay and they're really not, because they've had some trauma occur to them. So the psychological side of that, dealing with your most important asset, which are what? Your people, is every bit as important as dealing with the physical damage or the physical impacts of that on your business. This is really important for you, because the question we get most often when we talk to businesses about resilience or business continuity, which again are one and the same, why should I invest in this? And my response is generally, okay, you have a store, you have inventory. Mm-hmm. You have insurance on that inventory? Mm-hmm. Of course. I wouldn't have a store or inventory without insurance. I wouldn't have a plant without insurance. Okay. You pay a premium every month for that insurance? Uh-huh. Okay. What is the difference between paying for that insurance and taking measures that are in absolute terms often much less expensive than insurance premiums to help your business be more resilient? It's the same thing, except it's often less expensive, because the way that you make businesses more resilient, the techniques that you can employ, that again I'm going to show you, you can download a toolkit. It's got everything you need to know on how to do this. Very simple things. Like if you're prone to flooding, or even if you're not prone to flooding, but you're not on a hill, elevate your electronic equipment. Oh, but David, that's simple. Everyone would think of that. No, that's not true. Don't think that your employees, your supervisors, your colleagues in the business or industry that you're employed in think about these things, because they don't. There was a defense, accounting, facility in outside of New Orleans, in Metairie, which is, many of you heard of Metairie, it's a suburb of New Orleans, employed 1,700 people. Now, were they in a floodplain? No, they weren't in a floodplain, but you know, they can see out of Lake Pontchartrain that there are dikes around Lake Pontchartrain. They knew that they were below sea level. Guess where the estimated $600 million worth of computer equipment in that accounting facility was located? Well, they don't have basements in Louisiana, but it was as close as a basement as you could get in Louisiana. Yeah. And it was ruined. Guess where the Defense Accounting Center is now? It's in Virginia. And the equipment, even though it's in Virginia, is elevated. These things are things that you think about, you know, people, you assume that people know, but they don't know because they're not thinking in those terms. And resilience really is just thinking in terms of what if. Bless you. What if? What if a 200-year flood? I'm not in a 100-year floodplain. Are you in a 200-year floodplain? Are you in a 300-year floodplain? Because guess what? In Iowa, they had a 300-year flood. Don't think that just because it hasn't happened yet, it's not going to happen. It was so funny. A woman that helped me, worked with me on the recovery from the Moore tornadoes, which I didn't tell you that. I've been in and out of here since February. Lived here for 4 months, doing long-term economic recovery from the Moore tornado and the tornado in El Rito and the storm. And the woman with me is a Moore native. And we were talking about the fact that, you know, oh, by the way, how many of you have businesses in Moore? None of you. Okay. And this is not an indictment of Moore, Oklahoma. This is a reality. Moore, Oklahoma is a great place, great people. Deidre Avery, who's their economic development director, is a wonderful, very dedicated person who's become a real expert on resilience. But in Moore, Oklahoma, after the tornado hit in May of 2013, the Oklahoma City Chamber did a survey. They surveyed 100 businesses. Guess what percentage of businesses had a business continuity or resilience plan in place in Moore, Oklahoma in 2013? 15%. 15%. Yeah, you could. 15 out of 100. It's not an indictment of them. It's the fact that you don't think about this day to day. So why do it? Why do it? Ask one of the businesses in Moore that didn't make it. Internationally, there are some stats, and I'm hoping you're not just listening to me, but reading these. Clients of a disaster resilience firm collectively spent $2.3 million to prevent a projected $400 million and $80 million in loss when Katrina hit. That equals $208 in losses prevented for every $1 spent on resilience efforts. How about that for return on investment? Internationally, every $1 invested in risk reduction saves up to $10 in disaster response recovery costs. According to a recent statement by reinsurer Swiss Re, catastrophe bonds, which are just that, they're bonds that you purchase that pay in the event of a catastrophe, are no more expensive than traditional reinsurance, providing opportunities for more communities to provide funding for recovery efforts. Again, these are all facts. And they point to one thing. It's worth the investment. I keep pointing at the screen like the dog keeps backing up to the stove. I keep thinking it's not going to hurt. 4 big principles of economic resilience. And this is really important to you. I was honored to be asked to come advise the government of Japan after the 2011 earthquake in Ofontu. My watch is slow. I've got a quarter till. You got 5 till?
We're going to have Q&A.
Oh, well, we've got Q&A. Okay. That's good. I'm good. In Ofontu, Japan. And when this really hit me was seeing a Nippon steel plant that made fenders for Honda automobiles. Huge plant. That plant was up and running 48 hours after the earthquake and tsunami. The problem was the community around it was still in shambles. So what good is it to have the plant up and running if the community around it is dysfunctional and you can't operate and people can't get to work? They can't get their products out. Do you remember the shortage of Hondas? That was one of the main reasons why. Because the plant had prepared, but it had not reached out to the community and made sure the community was prepared. So now I'm going to lay another thing on you. It's not enough for you just to be insured through business continuity. You also need to ensure that the community around you is resilient. Well, gosh, David, how do I do that? Well, I'm going to get to that in just a second, because I have 5 minutes. There are funding for resilience efforts available through a variety of sources. For you, as a private business, this is for community resilience. A lot of the community resilience funding can translate into you. Now here's where I'm going to give you some real information. The Small Business Development Center, State of Oklahoma, they run a series of small business development centers all around the state. They offer business continuity training free of charge. They have a specialist who goes around the state and does this. All you need to do is contact the Small Business Development Center in your area. If you don't know where that is, go to sba.gov, click on Small Business Development Centers, click on Oklahoma, and it'll tell you where all the Small Business Development Centers are. They are doing that thanks to a grant from the Federal Small Business Administration. And we talk a lot about waste and everything in federal government, and believe me, I have my own business. I'm a capitalist. I'm an economic developer. But sometimes that money can be not wasted, but invested. In this case, it's being invested in your businesses to try to help them be more resilient. So take advantage of that. There are the steps to implement economic resilience, and that's the same for you as it is for a community. All you need to do is identify and motivate your leadership in your organization. Look at what information you already have about what practices you're undergoing in regards to coping with and recovering from a disaster. Conduct an assessment of that. Look at what resources are available to you, including some of the information I'm going to give you in 2 minutes, because I've got 2 minutes left. And set priorities and build sustainable initiatives. Again, I've been in quality for a long time. That's a typical NAT chart on implementing a quality program. You're just focusing on resilience. Now, my goodness. We talked about this. We really have to put this on the front burner and get it off the back burner. If we're going to stay competitive as a country with the amount and number of disasters we're having. This is a continuum of recovery, and what I want you to see is that the short-term response is in days. The intermediate recovery is in weeks and months, but the long-term is months to years. And the most important part of this is right here. Well, the preparedness, ongoing. That's what you need to focus on in your resilience efforts. This talks about the federal framework for recovery. Not that important that you know about that. If you have any questions about that or want to know more about it, again, we were late getting started. You can always contact me. You have my contact information. Resilience in Oklahoma. I want to get to these initiatives. This is a really great program. How many of you have businesses in Shawnee? Anybody in Shawnee? Shawnee's undergoing a complete community-wide resilience program, reaching out to the neighborhoods to individuals and saying, well, how can we help you be more resilient? What can we do to help you and your family in the event of a disaster? Going from there all the way to the city itself. They have a commitment from the Avitas Foundation for up to $4 million to do this. And it's going to be a model for the rest of the state. The Business Emergency and Communications Optimization Network is a network that's being formed out of Eastern Oklahoma County Tech that any of you could become a part of. That is just that. It's a network to facilitate communication and coordination in the event of an emergency. It's being put together now. I'm helping them put that effort together. If you're interested in that, contact Eastern Oklahoma County Technical School, and they can help you know more about it. Or contact me. Resilience Professional Development through the Resilience Development Institute. You heard that in my introduction. We're going to train professionals from around the world in how to do this. And in the process of that, we're going to learn a lot in Oklahoma about how to do resilience. Small Business Continuity, I told you about that with the Small Business Development Center. Rural Resilience, Oklahoma State's going to really focus on that because they have very specific needs. Resilience as an industry, $75 billion a year industry that John Reed and the Department of Commerce are looking at, focusing on to bring to Oklahoma, because you have a lot of assets in Oklahoma dealing with resilience and disasters. Resilience is an important component of quality. That's the bottom line message for you. Quality is a component of resilience. And a firm that I do a lot of work with is called Novasis, that does project management, Six Sigma based. They help BP clean up after the oil spill. They're the ones that righted the ship after BP, had 100 people come down with no equipment because they didn't have a system in place. So you can greatly enhance the effectiveness of resilience efforts in your companies. And if you're with a large company, they may have resilience efforts. Are you plugged into that? That's the question. You've got a real advantage in Oklahoma. You've got a lot going on in this arena. Get involved. Get plugged into it. If you want to know how, again, you can contact me. And I love the proverb that you said at lunch. This is another one. If there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm. Now, if you'll pull up really quickly, it'll take 2 seconds. If you'll pull up the website, and we'll go to Q&A.